So the matter I've raised is the need for the Minister for Health to make a statement on the situation regarding St Mary's Centre Telford in Dublin 4 and the care of persons currently depending on the centre services, along with his department's plans to prevent future such situations arising in Irish nursing and care homes. And I know the Minister will be well aware of the situation, but briefly, St Mary's Centre Telford on Merrion Road is a disability care facility for persons with disabilities, namely women with sight disabilities, and it also comprises on the same complex a nursing home. There were previously over 50 residents in the nursing home. They have, over just a very short period of time, over a few months, they have been moved or relocated with significant adverse effect to many of them and to their families. There are 18 persons still resident at the care facility, many of them very vulnerable persons who've been resident there for some time. This facility, and indeed both facilities on the same site, are run by a company owned by the Sisters of Charity. 2 members of the Sisters of Charity are the sole shareholders of the company, and the order owns the land. The company owned by the Sisters of Charity, just a few short months ago, moved to close both facilities and is seeking liquidation of the company running the care homes. The matter is before the High Court, and indeed I think there may be another hearing today. There was a hearing on Monday at which former employees of the facility and residents of the facility sought to appoint an examiner to try and keep the premises going, to try and keep some sort of consistency of care for the residents who are still present there. The judge refused that application. The law firm representing the former employees and the residents says it may appeal. I know that matter, as I say, is before the courts. And I have met with many of the former employees. There were over 80 originally employed at the facilities, and I've met with some of the residents who are still there, and indeed with some of the families who were so severely affected when the closure announcement was made. I should say that there's been extensive coverage in the press, and particularly Hot Press have been very good and very have covered this extensively. And there's an article today by Shamim Malakinin in Hot Press dealing with this. She speaks about the really serious effects this is having on very vulnerable persons and on their families. And I think there's no doubt but that the Sisters of Charity, the order involved, have not dealt well with this, to put it mildly. I think there's been a shameful lack of care shown for the residents and for the staff involved. And the unions involved, I should say, are seeking to secure adequate redundancy payments for the former staff. That itself is a huge issue, and the company has not behaved well towards staff, nor has it behaved well towards residents. The order, of course, stands to gain enormously in terms of monetary gain from the sale of the land, which may well be the consequent upon this liquidation. What's the state involvement, and why am I seeking the Minister's response? Well, the Minister clearly has a duty of care to these residents and indeed I would argue to the staff also, who have cared for residents through the COVID crisis and who continue to care for those who are still there. The HSE has funded the home extensively, and indeed Dublin City Council has an involvement, and I have through Councillor Declan Mina in Dublin City Council, I've been putting questions in about the council role, because the council paid for construction of the care facility and the housing for those 18 women who are currently still there. The provisional liquidator, I understand, has suggested that the order might rent a premises to the HSE or to extend the lease to ensure that women are not put out on the street. But there is clearly a state role here. Whatever happens in the court, as I say, I know there are court proceedings, whatever happens in the court and with the order and with the liquidators, the state has an obligation to those involved, and I'm asking the Minister, because of that, to make a statement on the issue today.
Thank you, Senator Batchik. Minister, please, to reply.
Senator Batchik, thank you very much for your words, and I want to thank you for the way you have raised this in a very constructive manner. Obviously, for the service users, for some of the former residents and their families, this has been indeed very, very challenging and very, very difficult for them. A key principle of underpinning government policy is to support older people to live in their own home with dignity and independence for as long as possible, with the correct wraparound supports. In recent years, there has been a shift in healthcare provision focus towards home care. Home support services are key in facilitating older people to remain at home. There will, of course, always be people whose needs are best met in a residential care setting, or other supported housing models like the services provided at St Mary's Telford nursing home. The Department of Health is aware of the difficult decision taken by the Board of Management of St Mary's Telford, which is owned, as you said, by the Sisters of Charity, to close. On the 23rd of July, the HSE were advised that St Mary's was placed in voluntary provisional liquidation by order of the High Court at the request of their Board of Directors. The HSE advised that this was not an expected or an anticipated action and was contrary to what the Board and Management had advised the HSE up until the previous week. Provisional liquidators were appointed and they contacted the HSE regarding client and staff welfare on the 27th of July. It is understood that HICWA were also aware of this issue at the time. At the time, there was 19 nursing home clients and 22 disability clients in residence in the centre. All residents have now transitioned from the nursing home element of the service, with 18 residents remaining in the disability element of the service. At the High Court hearing on the 8th of September, an application was made on behalf of a group of employees, former employees, residents and their families to consider putting the company into examinership. The application for receivership was rejected by the High Court in a ruling delivered on the 28th of September this week. The HSE is working with the provisional liquidators and continues to provide them with funding to enable care provision to be maintained for the remaining clients at the centre. As of the 3rd of September, the HSE has also commenced on-site engagement to review the service. The HSE is committed to supporting service provision and assistance in respect of client care as the request of the provisional liquidators who were legally fulfilling the role of provider at that point. I understand that an independent advocacy service was utilised where residents required and consented to such representation or assistance. The HSE remains conscious of the vulnerability of the residents at the centre of this issue and the anxiety and stress that this set of circumstances has caused to them and their families. And I can only imagine how the residents would have felt not expecting this news, and the fact that, you know, for some residents who may have dementia, they need the familiarity of the building that they're currently living in, and to have to change, that can be very, very challenging for many. It is hoped, Senator, that continued engagement will substantially alleviate this anxiety and stress. And I do want to thank you for bringing this forward. It's a very, very important issue.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Batchik for...
Just briefly to thank you very much, Minister, for your very strong reply. I had raised this matter of a number of times in the Seanad, but I'm grateful to you for responding so directly on it. And clearly it is an issue, it does raise an issue around provision of care to vulnerable persons beyond the specific issue about St Mary's. But on St Mary's, I'm grateful to you for setting out the background, and I'm shocked, although not surprised, to hear just how little notice was provided, that the HSE was only advised on 23rd July that St Mary's was being placed in voluntary provisional liquidation, and that this was not an expected or anticipated action, and indeed was contrary to what the Board and Management had advised the HSE up until the previous week. That's shocking, and it's shameful, and it shows just how shamefully the Sisters of Charity and related companies have behaved in respect of this issue, behaved towards residents, towards staff, and indeed towards the state. And let's not forget that the Sisters of Charity do owe the state, I think it's about €3 million in unpaid redress. So there is a broader issue and a broader context here. But I do thank you, Minister, for setting out the steps that are being taken by the HSE on an ongoing basis to engage with those who are still currently dependent for their homes on the continued existence of the facility. And I do very much hope, and I hope you'll bring this back to Minister Donnelly, that engagement will continue to ensure that provision is made for those vulnerable residents, and indeed that the uncertainty which they're currently facing, which has caused them so much stress and trauma, would be resolved by some sort of clear provision for their future care. I'd be really grateful for that. And just to remember again just how much stress and trauma and upset this has caused to people.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister, a very short reply.
Okay, Gorv Mahagud again, Cahirlach. Senator, thank you very much again for your answer and for the constructive approach you have taken on this, because as you have quite rightly said, this is these people's home from home. This is where they have been spending so many years of their lives, and the challenges that their families would have went through. Because, as you quite rightly said, the HSE advised that this was not an expected or anticipated action and was contrary to what the board and management had advised. Now, just to reiterate again, an independent advocacy service was utilised where residents required and consented to such representation or assistance, and they continue to support the families. Just to reiterate, obviously, that this was a course of action solely undertaken by the former board of directors. Provisional liquidators have been appointed, and the HSE has confirmed that it is working closely with the liquidators and the Health Information and Quality Authority to ensure that all remaining clients are appropriately cared for. And I think at the stage we are now, that has to be the outcome, that all remaining clients are appropriately cared for. And I will follow up on this myself, because I would be very concerned about it. These 18 clients have to find their new home from home, and it's very important that it will happen safely and it will happen swiftly, and that there's not too much uncertainty. What they need now is clarity and certainty, and I will follow up with you as well, Senator.
Yeah.